Hello and welcome to January the 2nd, 2024. I decided earlier on, with the storm raging outside yet again, another storm, I thought to myself, I know, I will do The Death of Grass by John Christopher. He's also known as Sam Ewald. When this book came out, it was 10 shillings and 6pence. Gosh. And it was written in 1956. And in today's money, that apparently is 0.525 pence. When my husband purchased this book, it cost him £150. As I said, this is a first edition, written in 1956 and published by Michael Joseph of London. And the artwork is by Trevor Denning, who did this fabulous artwork. Isn't this absolutely gorgeous? And this is John Custance and his family, and Roger Buckley and Pirry, who we will get to meet as we go along with this book review. If you've never read this book, I suggest you go and read it first and then perhaps come back to this review, because I'm going to do a proper full in-depth review and it will have spoilers, okay, just so you're aware. And that's the back of the book. Nothing written on the blurb at the back, but as you can see, apart from a tiny amount of foxing, the book is in incredible good condition. Absolutely gorgeous, worth every penny, I can tell you. My husband, bless him, wanted me to have this because I adore The Death of Grass. And as we go through, you'll understand and see why. So without further ado, we will start with the plot. As you might notice, I have quite a lot of crib notes. So we will start with, we first meet John and David Custance when they are little boys. They go to meet old Grandfather Beverley at his farm in Blind Gill. Keep Blind Gill in the back of your mind, because it's the pivotal focal point for the entire novel. This basically, Blind Gill becomes the Garden of Eden, which the two brothers will fight for and defend to the death. That's quite important. It is protected by a river called the River Leap, which is 35 miles, neither here nor there, roughly 35 miles of a very fast, deep and dangerous river. Their mother, John and David's mother, Hilda Custance, is here to mend a family rift between herself and her father, Jess Hillen. Old Grandfather Beverley, right, that's his name. We then meet the brothers. After this, you've got to remember that the mother has now mended the family rift. Grandfather Beverley dies and he leaves the farm and the money to David, and John goes off to become an architect, because that's what he wanted to do. Right, so David stays in Yorkshire and John goes off to London. When we meet the brothers again a quarter of a century later, the two brothers are stood at the bank of the River Leap and they are discussing the world and the current events facing the country. John has since married to a lady called Anne, and he has a son, Davy, and a daughter, Mary. The children are playing and the adults are discussing the government's directives as to what needs to be grown in order to feed the nation. At this point, the virus Chung Li is attacking Asia. Hong Kong is supposed to be in flames and the government there is in totalitarian mode and is machine gunning down the residents. They are discussing if Hong Kong will fall. Starvation at this point is raising its ugly head, but it still feels far away, especially as America is still sending the grain ships. We will flip to the summer. Phase 5 of Chung Li leaks out and is followed by widespread rioting in parts of the Far East that were nearest to the focus of infection. Farmers have been given instructions to keep the closest possible eye on the signs of the virus, and they are out there patrolling hourly looking for this virus. Rich nations are still sending grain shipments to the troubled areas. The virus is spreading by route contact and through the air. The children are beginning to notice the news articles, but it's fleeting and soon forgotten. Roger Buckley is John's friend who works for the government. His wife Olivia and their son Steve are close friends of the Custance family. And Roger is the one who alerts John to the plans the governments are forming on how to deal with the UK citizens should we run out of food. At this moment in time, we are still able to feed our nation. In America, the House of Representatives passed an amendment to a presidential bill of food aid, calling for a plimsoll line for food stocks for home use. A certain minimum tonnage of all foods was to be kept in reserve to be used inside the USA only. There is hope that Russia may send out a new grain shipment. So we're starting to see the gears of the political elite turning towards looking after their own countries and less of feeding the world. And it's a form of protectionism, and we will see more of that as we go along. There is hope that Russia may send out a new grain shipment, but that's all it is, hope. The rich nations at this point are starting to discuss stopping sending food to China, India, Pakistan, Africa, basically all the countries that have large populations and not enough food to feed themselves. Later, going into winter, things go very, very wrong. Chung Li eventually spreads all over the world. Every blade of grass dies along with all the cattle as we cannot feed them. Riots ensue around the world. Roger gets news of our benevolent government in the UK that they are to use hydrogen bombs on all major cities within the UK. At this point, John Custance and Roger and their families decide to escape from London and run to David's farm, Blind Gill. David has been left the farm and the land by their grandfather. I explained this earlier. And basically, David has offered sanctuary for John and his family, along with Roger and his family. Now, both Roger and John decide, and they know they can't escape London without firearms. So, with great insight into this, and I understand the need and desperation versus common sense, but they decide to try and rob a local gunsmith called Pirrie. Pirrie nearly ends up shooting those two. He reasons with Roger and John that they won't get far without him. So reluctantly they take Pirrie and his wife and they make their way to the Westmoreland Valley where the farm Blind Gill is. On the way to the farm, John's wife and daughter are abducted and raped because John is knocked out by the thugs at a fake railway closure. While he's unconscious, they steal the car and drive off with the mother and daughter. Now, in intelligence and reading this, you'll be saying to yourself something along the lines of, why on earth didn't they all stick together? Well, I believe that John was having car trouble, so Roger and Pirrie drive off ahead, and John said, "Oh, I'll catch up with you." Well, this is what happens when you split the group. They go for the weakest one, they take out the male, and the females are then left to defend themselves or be killed, or raped and then killed. Anyway, fortunately they weren't killed because Roger realised something was wrong, flashed to Pirrie, they stopped their cars, they turned round, they came back, they found out John on the roadside, knocked out, brought him round, he explained what had happened, and it was only because there was an oil leak in John's car that they managed to find the oil spots on the ground and followed them back, found the car, found the field where the women were being attacked, and Pirrie managed to shoot one of them, one of the rapists, and managed to rescue the girls, and then Anne shot the other rapist for raping her daughter. Anyway, as we go along with this journey, after all that had happened, if that wasn't bad enough, John, Roger and Pirrie do their fair share of killing and fighting in order to get the food and shelter for their families. As you can see, the dynamics of the family has ultimately changed. We are more of a tribe now, with John as its leader and Pirrie his second in command. Roger seems to have been pushed way down the food chain, and he is very resentful of this and makes his feelings to John quite clear. John and his tribe of many, as he has encountered lots of families trying to escape the madness and the anarchy that has descended upon the United Kingdom, find themselves at the heavily guarded entrance of Blind Gill. David is sent for on the farm, and he comes down to the entrance of Blind Gill to see his brother John. David explains to John that he can only take him and his family and Roger and his family as per the agreement. This angers John. He says, "David and I have come many miles and I have so many people in my group. I cannot I will not abandon them. David, exasperated, basically says, well, mate, that's not my problem. I will get the guardsmen to meet you here at midnight to let you and Roger in and your families. That's it. End of. No one else can come in. As David points out, the townsfolk of Westmoreland now have a say in how the farm is run because they have given their lives to defend it. So you can see both sides of the argument here. John and Pirrie decide together that at midnight they're going to rush the only entrance exit of Blind Gill. And they use the river leap because although it's there as a deterrent to entry because it's so fast and deep and may I point out very dangerous, no one can cross it except John knows of a ledge that he found as a young boy when he fell in. John decides at midnight that he and Pirrie will go into the river and sneak up on the machine gun post guarding the entrance exit because there's only one way in and one way out of Blind Gill. They decide between them to ambush the guardsmen, thus opening the gates and letting himself, Pirrie and the other families in. During the battle, Pirrie is killed by gunshot to the chest. And quite a lot of the townsfolk die in the gun battle, as do many of John's tribe. And this is where everything hits the fan in spectacular fashion. We end the novel with the realisation that David, John's brother, has been shot and killed while manning the machine gun post. Yeah, he had come down to let his brother and Roger and their families in. And to John's horror, he realises that it was he who shot and killed his own brother. Can you imagine the gut-wrenching heartache? Not only is he dead, but he killed him. His wife Anne says, darling, she says this to John, darling, I'm sorry for what I said last night. And John is so deeply affected by everything. He's so racked with guilt, he can't talk, he can't answer her. She goes on saying to him, it's going to be different now. You were right. And bizarrely, in the afternoon, they managed to find a solicitor from Lepton. And he comes back to read David's will. And John finds out that the farm and the money have all been left to him. So not only is he left with the racking guilt that he shot and killed his own brother, that he now finds out that he was going to get the farm and the money anyway. But what does it matter? Because the United Kingdom is on its backside. It has no rule of law. Anarchy is ruling everything. And no one can feed themselves because we don't have any food. Which is why they were going to use the hydrogen bombs on us, because that would have been preferable to us all starving to death. Which is basically what's going to happen to the United Kingdom. Anne is left trying to reassure John that it wasn't his fault. And we end the novel on a very biblical note. John realises that when he dies, the farm will be passed to his son, Davy. But he will more than farm it. It will become a brand new kingdom. And as he puts it quite neatly, not as much as Cain left to Enoch though. He knows that this land will become the focal point and his son Davy will become the new king when he passes. And he makes reference to Pirrie about the gun that Piri gave him when he knew that he was done for, and he wanted to throw the gun away, but as Piri was always drilling into him, there is no sense in throwing a good gun away, and he knows that this gun will be passed to Davy, and Davy will pass it to his son, because it's his line that will become the new king of what is left of England. Quite a fitting way to end such an in-depth book about, oh gosh, it covers everything, doesn't it? It covers, well, you can see why it's my favourite novel, because it covers famine, world devastation, geopolitics, a virus, an apocalypse. It's the dystopian apocalyptic novel of novels. If you ever wondered what the world would do to itself faced with ultimate starvation, this is the book for you. It covers so many aspects: religion, race, geopolitical views, the dynamics of a family versus tribal instincts. I mean, what is it to be part of the human race and to be part of the family? We have a delicate balance between humanity and animal instinct. It's so finely balanced, but this balance is to keep all of us working as a civilized society. And how easily these bonds are broken when society is fractured beyond repair. That's what this book is. And if that is something that you find interesting, then you are going to absolutely love this book. I know it's an old book, but it's as relative to back then as it is to now. And if you ever wanted to get into the mindset of how a government would run its country, then, well, this is the book for you. And honestly say, it's the only book I have in audio form from Audiobooks Amazon, in radio from the BBC, narrated by David Mitchell from 2009 for Radio 4, the movie No Blade of Grass from 1970 by Colonel Wilde. I have the 1957 adaptation on BBC Radio, and I also have the BBC World Service broadcast in 1986. It's been done in many forms, but it's still the same outcome. It's a fantastic novel. As I say, it deals with famines and starvation, geopolitical, how we as human beings cope when we're faced with nothing, and how we behave with each other. I can't recommend this book enough. It should be in the top 100 books that you read before you die. It is the seminal work for John Christopher, and this is part of his private collection. So I am a very lucky girl for my husband to have been able to buy this for me, and he got it me at an auction, and my husband knew that this book was of great importance to me, and I'm not kidding, I would run back into a burning house to grab this copy because it is so special. I'll say what I always do. Happy readings, darlings, and enjoy. And if you feel like you want to give me a thumbs up or a like or subscribe, hit that subscribe button. Yes. Join me as we go through the year 2004. 2004? Good gosh, I've gone back to when my daughter's born. 2024. Yes, that's the year. That's the year I mean. I'm so excited about telling you about this book, I've forgotten what year we're in. Mind you, it's only the 2nd of January, so I can be forgiven. Anyway, on the journey through 2024, we will be covering more books like The Death of Grass. So I do hope you will join me for those adventures. And as I say, please give me a thumbs up, yeah, or a like, or hit that subscribe button, and you will get to see more of these type of novels, because I specialise in the apocalypse. Happy readings, darlings, and enjoy.